Welcome to Friday I'm in Bed.
Podcast for midlife women living their best life, but in bed by 10.
We're here to chat and sometimes rant about the news of the week and how it affects us and you.
I'm Kate, a 53-year-old postmenopausal mum of two, whose happy place is at the front of a very loud gig, especially one that ends early.
I'm Jem, I'm 46 years old. I love running and cocktails and I'm child-free, but I am a devoted mum to two very spoilt pug babies. But before we begin, we will occasionally be discussing sensitive topics, but we will always notify you in advance of each section. And we can add support group websites and phone numbers that will help you in the show notes.
Please do like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and do leave us a comment. We love to chat, as you can probably tell.
This week on Friday I'm in Bed, we're getting into the government's suggestion that women's portion sizes should be smaller and asking whether this is genuine public health advice or just recycled sexist nonsense.
We're also talking about copying, whether it's ever okay to lift someone else's work or designs. Spoiler, no. And why inspiration isn't the same thing as plagiarism.
And finally, we're unpacking Australia's under-16 social media ban and questioning whether anyone actually thought it through, especially when kids aren't even on Facebook and platforms like gaming chats, Discord and WhatsApp seem to have been ignored.
So grab a cuppa or something stronger and let's get into it. Hi, everybody, and hi, Jem. How are you?
I'm good. It's my rebirth today.
Your rebirth day. Tell me about that.
I am 4 years old. So Christmas 21, I had a stem cell transplant, which was part of my cancer treatment. And when you have a stem cell transplant, they call it your rebirth day because they like wipe out your immune system and everything. You have to have all your baby jabs again. So it's your rebirth day. So that was 4 years ago today. I had that. So 4 years ago today, I was bald, in hospital, waiting to feel even worse than I did. But today...
Yay! And what are you doing to celebrate?
I have booked myself into a hotel on my own. It's got a bath in the bedroom, and I'm going to sit in the bath and watch TV all night.
Oh, sounds like bliss. Christmas films or just, I don't know, Coronation Street?
I might watch Christmas films. I feel like I need to get a bit more festive.
I did my wrapping yesterday. I started the wrapping. And I put on The Holiday. I always wrap presents to The Holiday, which sounds really kind of magical, except you can't do both at the same time. You can't actually watch a film and wrap your presents up. But hey, I made a start.
Did you just stop for the Jude Law bit?
Yeah. I prefer Jack Black. There you go. Little bit of a fact about me. You're a funny man to a pretty boy.
Both.
True. Well, I had the week from hell. My son had his jewellery stolen from college. So I spent the week mostly dealing with his anger, frustration, tears, and dealing with the police. And then my daughter got sick. And so I was speaking to doctors. And you know, you have those weeks where you just chase your tail the entire time, just trying to deal with life admin, official life admin, you know, like police, insurance companies. And glad that week's over.
Yeah, well, it's Christmas next week, not to scare anyone. So.
And are you ready? You said you're not feeling very festive.
No, absolutely not. We've got no decorations up. I've bought like 2 presents. Yeah, I'm not. Let's discuss that later because that's.
Okay, we won't talk about that.
Yeah, we've got way more interesting things to talk about than my complete disorganisation today.
We have. So let's get into it. So, Jem, one of the things I want to talk about this week is whether women should be fed less than men. So, put a bit of context here. The obesity tsar, is that how you pronounce it? In the government has written an article in The Lancet, and one of his thoughts around tackling obesity is to reduce portion sizes in restaurants, which is a good idea because, you know, having a smaller meal is great. For some people. However, what he has said as well, that this would be really good for women and others with lower calorific needs. Now, obviously, this is kicked off all over social and on, you know, This Morning and, you know, television programs and stuff because, you know, real feeling of women's sizes, ladies' sizes, and is that really feeding into diet culture? You know, is it, you know, inherently sexist, but also not considering the fact that women do need to get fed, sorry, do need to eat, and, could be pregnant, could be where are they on their menstrual cycle? They could have not eaten all day, they could have been exercising and need food. And also, women generally look after themselves last. Whilst we know that women need less calories than men, is it okay to have women's sizes at in restaurants and cafes and all that kind of thing? So let's talk about women's sizes, first of all.
So I was quite intrigued by this one, actually, because this is like one of my, I won't get ranty, I promise. Not again. We've had plenty of ranting from me recently, but it's definitely something that I think about a lot as a kind of, I would say former athlete now, played roller derby. I was very, very, very active. Obviously my calorie needs then were a lot higher. And it was the suggestion. I mean, as I understand, it was never government policy. This was their
It's a suggestion.
czar or whatever, suggesting that this could be something that's available. It's kind of, I think on the surface, it's not a bad idea. Reducing portion sizes by 25%, that's not a bad idea. And also potentially the idea of offering a large portion and a smaller portion, not necessarily a bad idea. I think it was the suggesting that this was specifically aimed at women because they had lower caloric needs, because obesity is not a female problem. It's higher in men, if anything. I actually read the stats, didn't write them down, obviously, but it was, very slightly higher in men. And did you write them down?
No.
You had that look on your face then like, oh, I did the research too. Yeah, so it's actually very slightly higher in men. So obviously we're all consuming too many calories if that's the case. And having that policed when you go to a restaurant for a nice meal out does seem a little bit kind of overkill. But giving people the option of choosing a smaller portion and therefore not feeling like they're wasting food if they leave food on their plate is in theory a great idea. Caloric needs vary so widely between different women, different men, different body sizes, that making it a suggestion that's specifically for women, no.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that chat. Anyway.
I mean, absolutely. I think, first of all, we do need, well, obviously, everybody's different, but it is known that we need to consume. Well, again, the word need is wrong. We don't necessarily need as many calories as a man, but having this ability to choose, in 2025 is great. And also, I think if I'm going out for dinner, say I need less calories than my husband, let's just say, which is true. He does a manual job, for example, and he might need more, want more, but I'm going to save up all my calories, if anything, to go to Pizza Express. So what I'm not going to do is get there and go, oh, actually, I'd like the small one. Although saying that, this isn't an advert for Pizza Express. They do have a pizza with a hole cut out and they put
they cut the best bit out.
I know, but I do quite like that for lunch if I can't manage it. So I think there is something about having a smaller portion available, because we do know that you can't ask for the children's meal if you're not a child. I was reading something online about, it was an older woman who wanted, I think it was in the Toby Carvery or something, she wanted a child's portion and was refused, and she was like, but I'm not going to fill a plate like that. Particularly as you get older as well, she might want less. She might just have eaten, who knows already, but can I have a smaller plate, the child's plate? And was told no. And it was like, that's not fair either, because actually if I'm a paying customer, surely I can have the children's one. I think it's quite nice to have those options.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, we've spoken before about the fact that I am taking a GLP-1. I am on Manjaro. And one of the things that does is delays gastric emptying. So you can't physically eat as much. Even if I wanted to go out and have 4 plates at a Toby Carvery, I couldn't physically eat that much. So the option to pay less for a smaller portion. Fair pricing was something else that he mentioned, that if there were smaller portions, they should be fairly priced.
Well,
I think we all know if they were aimed at women, they would almost certainly be more expensive, but no.
Never mind. They'd have a little pink tax on it for the women.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily averse to the idea of there being the option to have a smaller portion instead of it specifically being marketed as a child size portion. That you could go, okay, I'm only going to want a half plate of this. Can I pay half as much, please? But the suggestion that caloric needs are this kind of set level that women should always eat less than men is very, very, very problematic. One of the things I also thought about it, though, was that it seems such a, if you're looking for ways to tackle obesity, there are like way more things before we get to what you eat in a restaurant if you go out for dinner once a week.
If
It's
that.
not like everyone's, yeah, I was going to say if that, because it's not like, we've got cost of living crisis, everything's expensive. It's not like everyone's eating out for dinner every night. So at the end of the day, it is what we do every day that is affecting people. It's lack of exercise, lack of that. So, yeah, so lack of the little bits of exercise, the little micro snippets, walking to the shop instead of driving to the shop. I've forgotten the proper term for it now. But all those kind of things, and food droughts, people who literally can't access fresh and nutritious food and therefore end up eating a lot of overprocessed, high fat, high salt, high sugar kind of foods. All these things feel like they should be way higher up the list than just suggesting that when women go out for dinner, they should order a smaller portion.
They should eat less.
Like, yeah.
But also, haven't they, and I don't know the details of this, the new milkshake tax, like, that's come in, they're talking about, just putting money on more, making things that are inherently sugary, making them more expensive. But again, so what they're doing is they're putting the onus back onto us. So we, if you want the sugary thing, you have to pay more, rather than telling McDonald's or whoever to make the thing less sugary, for example. It always comes back to the consumer. It's a bit like plastic packaging. Buy less things in plastic. Yeah, agree. But it would be better to tell the manufacturers to stop putting it in plastic so that we can't buy the plastic. Always it's put on us rather than the big companies. Now I sound like I'm going to get, like the conspiracy theory pharma thing. But, it's like put the onus back on the companies to do something rather than me going out for a pizza every 6 weeks. Why?
One of the I believe one of the impacts of the sugar tax
Mm.
was that a lot of companies did reduce the amount of sugar in their items so that they could sell it for less. So one of the arguments is that if they put that tax on it so that it will cost more, companies, to stay competitive, will reduce that in order to sell their products for less. I believe that is one of the, which, I mean, it does sound a little bit like that argument for trickle-down economics to me, where it's all right, if we make all the rich people really rich, the people at the bottom get richer as well. That's not working. So, but I believe that that's part of the intention of it when they talk about putting taxes on things. But it is always, when they're concerned that there is this obesity crisis, it is always stick over carrot, isn't it?
Well, there's a pub near me, back to portion sizes, that doesn't have a children's menu. The children can choose anything on the menu and have a smaller plate of it, which I think is brilliant, because children's menus, back to sugar and processed food, the children's menu at most restaurants is like chicken nuggets, for example. So that's really good. But it also they allow women or anybody to order the smaller plate. So bringing it back to that, I think it makes really economic sense as well, because you don't have the food waste. And that restaurant, you cannot get a table there. It's always fully booked, because, you're back to Toby Carvery. You can have your roast, they do a roast dinner, but you can have a smaller portion. And it does cost, I don't know if it's half the price. I don't know. It is less. So I think economically for the restaurants, I think that probably would work as well.
Yeah. I mean, portion sizes is one of the ways that they are perceived to like add value. If you're like, oh, I got this massive portion, I can barely eat it. It kind of adds value in like the mind of the consumer, which is, again, one of the reasons why this isn't necessarily the way to tackle these things, because I think we have this, as portion sizes increase, we do start to see that is a normal portion size, rather than considering that maybe we don't need to eat that much. If we go out and it's a treat, that we should be having huge portions rather than nouvelle cuisine, a single string bean arranged on a plate with a sliver of chicken. But that is that there is a huge cultural shift that is necessary to stop people thinking of that. And it's where do we lead that? Is the the retailers? Is it on them to lead the way and start telling us, no, you don't need all that food? But that then's very kind of patriarchal and kind of nanny state, isn't it? Just go, you don't need to eat all that food. Or is it on us as consumers to start demanding the smaller portions? Yeah, so is it on? I mean, I asked this question and it's not like I'm expecting you to have the answer and go, yes, absolutely, I have the answer to that. It's down to the government to insist that we'll have smaller portion sizes. But the answer to me, I mean, it probably lies somewhere in the middle. Almost everything does, doesn't it? Kind of just normalizing that idea that you don't have to be stuffed every time you go out to eat would be a good start. I personally massive favor of being able to buy a smaller portion. Not so keen on them telling me this is the ladies' portion any more than I was when I went into the gym and they told me that the smaller bar was the ladies' bar because it weighed 5 kilo less.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's the bit that's gone wrong, hasn't it? The overall message that eating less can help. If you want to eat less or need to eat less, because obviously some people, having just done loads of exercise, might want to eat more, for example. But labeling it as, really good for ladies, not actually the words he used, women was the word he used, just reeks of singling us out. And that's the bit that everybody is actually upset about.
But so much of diet culture is targeted at women. They sell us products and stupid slimming shakes and exercise gear that no one's ever going to use. And so much of that is already sold at women that adding this on there as well just seems unnecessary. Women know, don't they?
They do. And that's why everybody is kicked off about it, because
Yeah, and it was the same when they started insisting that they put the calories on every single item in restaurants with over so many staff. I still don't think that was a good idea.
well, I was going
I
to say,
think
do you think that works? Do you think people, because I look at it, but it doesn't help me. It makes me start to overanalyze like food, which
exactly,
I
and
don't want to do.
we've got such a massive rise in eating disorders as well. And even not clinically diagnosed eating disorders, disordered eating is just generally is a big problem among women. And when you start offering, have a smaller portion size, oh, here's how many calories are in that. You come out for dinner, make sure you don't eat too much. You're just adding another layer of problems onto people who are in recovery from eating disorders and things like that.
But also when we're going out to dinner. I think that's what's really key here is hospitality is dead. Like nobody is going out to eat to dinner. Nobody can afford to go out to dinner. And now suddenly you want to police us even more when we go out to dinner. I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, people might have gone out for dinner all the time. But now it's a treat going out for dinner. And I don't want to be told that I can't have that size or made to feel like I can't have that size, and that size has got those calories in, and I just want to go and enjoy myself. And I think that's the bit. The tackling it is important, but going out to dinner is such a luxury that it feels like the wrong time.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, I feel like we spend far too much time saying, and to wrap this up, the important thing would be if we lived in a completely different world.
Or
But
me
here we are
saying,
again.
yeah, or me
Here we are
saying,
again. There's a much bigger cultural shift needed. And I don't think single measures like this are the kind of thing that's really going to help.
it's basically bullshit.
So this one is fun. Don't know if it's a bit niche, but I want to talk about Sweaty Betty. Sweaty Betty, for people who don't know, I'm assuming they do, are a gym wear, athletic clothing gym producer. Yeah, that was an excellent description of who Sweaty Betty were.
I'm sure the branding team would be really proud of that.
They sell women's gym wear,
Yes.
basically.
And
That's
it's
where
quite
you buy
expensive.
very expensive. I get a discount because I'm a personal trainer. There we go. So, yeah, very expensive gym wear. I own quite a fair bit of their stuff. They do some really nice leggings, running leggings particularly. They were one of the sponsors of the Royal Parks Half, which I did earlier this year. Basically, they're a very big company that sold themselves on empowering women for a long time. Recently, a personal trainer and influencer creator called Georgina Cox is taking them to court. In 2020, she did a post that went viral with where she had "wear the damn shorts" written down her leg. And then in 2023, I just had to count years because I knew they'd run it 3 years. In 2023, she got an email from Sweaty Betty that said, "Oh, we are running a campaign with very similar messaging to your "wear the damn shorts" slogan. Do you mind? And do you want to be involved?" And she said, "Great, yeah." So she took part in the campaign with Sweaty Betty. And then in 24, they asked her again to be involved. Do they mind if she, yeah, absolutely fine. The shops were wrapped in "wear the damn shorts." They sold T-shirts. The slogan was everywhere. And I believe she was paid for her work again. In 2025, they ran the campaign and they did not include her. And she didn't know it was being run again. So when she saw it, she contacted them and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And they said, "Our team wants to work with influencers that new influencers that they haven't worked with before this year." And she was like, "Well, that's not really the point. It's my work." And she sent a cease and desist letter. They then offered her something kind of paltry, like £4,000, I think it was, for future use, all previous and future use of the slogan, plus her never talking about it. And she said, put it all over her socials and took them to court. So it's quite interesting because that's then been everywhere. And as a company that sells each other on empowering women, Sweaty Betty have been stum about it. Their lawyer sent a letter calling her bitter and just jealous that she wasn't included in the campaign this year, basically, which is not good language from a company that empowers women. And since then, another couple of people have come forward and said that they've had slogans that Sweaty Betty have just lifted wholesale and used. No ifs, no buts. No ifs, just buts was one of them with the double T. And something like "supporting you through movement, menopause, and maternity," or something like that were the slogans. So the question is, can you own a slogan like that? And is what Sweaty Betty have done in this instance, is it okay?
Such a tricky one, but a really interesting one, because obviously you can trademark a slogan, but if you haven't trademarked it, then you don't really own it, if you know what I mean. But is that ever any excuse for literally taking somebody's work? And it's happened to me over and over and over again. So I came up with a slogan, like a tagline for my wedding business, and a competitor literally used the same one like 3 weeks later, like literally the word for word. And what could I do about it, really? Because I mean, it wasn't a big brand like Sweaty Betty, but what can I do? It's just words. I don't own the words. It's unethical and it's also lazy. And that was how I felt. It's like, well, make your own freaking like lineup. We spent ages on the sofa, me and my husband, he's really good at copywriting, coming up with the slogan, and you've just taken it. But then you're like, do I shout this out? Does it make me look really bitter, to use the lawyer's words? Do I look, do I rise above it? And then people, you put it out there and people go, well, imitation's the greatest form of
flattery. Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
good.
No, because number one, this isn't imitation. This is 100% the same. That's not imitating. It's stealing and it's lazy. And now, who knows who said it first, me or them? People might think I've stolen it. So it's just, and it makes you feel so angry and so like disappointed. And then you like, do I out them on social media? And then you think, am I going to look awful if I out them? And it's like, and it carries on, doesn't it? Because you hear designers, they're being ripped off by Shein and Temu, their designs are literally lifted. But then you also hear of Marks and Spencer's or Asda or whoever lifting people's designs. You hear it and see it all the time, and it's not on.
There's a fine line between that kind of inspiration and imitation. It's a very fine line. I think particularly in this instance, the fact that Sweaty Betty contacted her originally and said, your slogan, you want to come work with us in this, there's kind of no question of that. However, they are, I'm no lawyer, which will become painfully clear, but there is, as far as I'm aware, it's not something where copyright would be a thing. So the intellectual property on something like a slogan, unless you've trademarked it, which in this case hasn't happened, is that essentially there isn't a leg to stand on if someone takes it. So you've either got to kind of try and, yeah. So I don't know how the court case will go, but I do think that the issue is a greater one of ethics, and is that an ethical way to do business? And having worked with her for the first 2 years, why was it that they suddenly decided not to in year 3? Were there new people in who didn't even know that it was hers? In which case, why are they now doubling down on the issue? Kind of, they haven't, I think they released one statement, but their social media is just completely ignoring it. There's been talk that there's been negative comments underneath a lot of their posts that they were deleting. And then they are getting positive comments on some of their posts, which people have then looked into, because this always happens, and found out that they work for Sweaty Betty.
Of course. I mean,
They're like head of HR or something.
Yeah, and that is obviously clear cut because there's the email proof. But I know when I come up with a name for something, well, even coming up with a name for this podcast, we brainstorm, and I've done that on many things I've launched and phrases and stuff. And then I go, I've got it. That's a great name, or a slogan or whatever. I then go and check that nobody else has got it. And if they have, I go, back to the drawing board. I don't go, well, who cares? I'm going to do it anyway, which is the thing that so many companies do. And in my case, some of the things I've had has been people who are kind of equal with me, let's just say, peers or, that kind of thing, which is bad enough. Don't get me wrong. But when it's the big boys doing it to small independent creatives, that's the bit that becomes even more unethical, doesn't it? Because it's like you think, and I'm not saying this necessarily about Sweaty Betty, I don't know anything about that, but just it's like these companies feel I'm more important and I can get away with it. Like Temu, let's just say, they don't care that they're ripping off somebody's designs. And how I think they bank on the little person, obviously, they're not little, but they're perceived as little.
Yeah.
Just going, oh well, not a lot I can do, and then they'll carry on, type of thing. They're banking on that. So I think it's amazing when you see somebody going, no, actually, I will take you to court.
This is what I think. It's amazing that she's seeing this through, even if it's not a particular thing that she might win. It's good to have it, because I think it will make a lot of companies look at their business practices as well, because I believe this has had quite an impact on their sales and their reputation. So I think that it will make a lot of companies look more carefully at how they work with creators and where their things come from. It is easy to occasionally you come up with that fantastic idea, you check, you don't find it, and then you've inadvertently taken something. But again, then there's that thing of owning up. I wasn't aware, dealing with people. And I think one of the things when it's bigger companies is that it comes down to that, like, apparently you can get away with anything if you have money. That they are knowing that the amount of money they will make off of whatever they've stolen is going to be greater than the amount it's going to cost them if they're called out on it. And I think that that's one of the things.
Having worked for big corporations and stuff, chances are that the internal team haven't come up with it anyway. So they'll outsource their marketing or their branding or their design work. It gets outsourced to big agencies who come up with suggestions, and then obviously it's decided whether they use it or not. So yeah, there's kind of layers of ethics here as well, because chances are, obviously in the beginning, it's not just like one person, two people in a room coming up with ideas. It's much, much bigger, and generally is outsourced to advertising agencies and stuff. So they are potentially the ones doing the nicking as well.
But then as a company, when you find out something like that's happened, your reputation management has got to be...
Exactly.
It's not been dealt with amazingly well. I think it is difficult sometimes. One of the things that I had that was a bit similar, well, probably not at all similar, was... But yeah, and you were talking about slogans for your wedding company earlier on. I ran a website called Vintage Norwich years ago, and we had the Vintage Norwich Awards, and I owned the domain name Vintage Norwich. And then I was suddenly walking over the other side of the city and walked past a shop that had called itself Norwich Vintage and bought norwichvintage.co.uk. And I was a bit like...
about that.
Yeah, exactly, because they are completely common words, and I kind of knew that they were completely common words, and that, you know, if you're a vintage shop in Norwich, that's not necessarily a weird name to come up with to call yourself. And I don't know who was behind it, so, but you know, there's that little bit of you that goes,
Yeah, but I have this every single week with my content. So obviously I'm Fearless at 50. I create content 2 or 3 times a day on Instagram and TikTok. And like I do like a nostalgia reel on a Saturday, which is like, you know, remember these toys or remember this stuff. And obviously that's not new. Like, you know, I make them though myself, and I put the wording on myself. And then this sort of influencer that's got double the followers for me created exactly the same post, like in a carousel, not a video, same images, same text, and did it as a carousel. And so even the, you know, things that were normal back in the day but seem weird now, which was the title, exactly the same photographs. And it's like, whoa, like I don't own, obviously, any copyright over that, but you've even, like, used the same images and the same words. Like,
yeah.
can you at least do your own words? And it
I
drives
mean,
me
put these words into ChatGPT and tell it to rewrite it.
it's like, come on, at least try and make it look different.
Yeah.
Um, and I have this all the time, and I find it incredibly frustrating. And sometimes I do call it out. There was a content creator, again, bigger than me, and I can't remember what the post was, but it was she made exactly the same post, the same words, but with her photos. And I was like, oh no, I've had enough. I've had enough of this. So I wrote underneath, instead of calling her out, I went, couldn't agree more. I made a post all about this, chatting about this very subject last week. So I wasn't saying for
You
you,
stole it.
but I was going, I see you. I
I see
see
you.
you. And interestingly, within about 2 minutes, she had changed her caption to say the post was influenced by me. And I thought, but I didn't call, and I didn't then say thank you. I didn't, I just made it like really like, yeah, really important point. I was chatting about this earlier, you know, i.e., yeah, I see you, and it works. So you can
Uh,
kind of call it out without mega
yeah.
calling it out. But
I
again,
mean,
there's a fine
again,
line.
I mean, back in my blogging days, I am sure that it's difficult if you were like if you're reading a lot and consuming a lot of content. Sometimes you might forget where you've seen something, or you just kind of something pops up in your head, and you're like, I don't know where this came from, but I'm going to do it. So it is easy to make that mistake. But again, I think that sometimes if you are called out on it, yeah, how you deal with it is one of the very important things in the kind of online space. That kind of being seen as trustworthy, I think, is really important. And
Mm.
for even for big companies, because at the end of the day, they might have a lot of money and they might have a lot of influence, but they are still working in the same space as the small creators. When they're on Instagram, they're working in that same space, so they need to build that same level of trust with their audiences. And I think that as a consumer, if I then find out that a company has been mean, it might be perfectly legal, but it's mean. And it makes me think less of them as a company, that kind of brand respect.
With the whole cancel culture thing that's going, you know, it's amazing how people aren't scared of being cancelled or being, you know, because as you said, if they're all those negative comments on a post, I mean, I have negative comments on posts sometimes, not trolling, just disagreeing, you know, a lot with me, for example. And sometimes it's like, "Ooh." And I think, like, I almost want to delete it. And some people say, just delete. And it's like, well, no, because if I delete anything that disagrees with me, then I look like I'm, you know, above everybody else and what I say is right. And so I think it's okay to keep,
Mm.
you know, disagreements up there. But even I sometimes think, oh, should I take this down? And so to actively remove anything negative and not leave
Mhm.
any up, again, just shows that they know. They know it's wrong, because
They
otherwise
know,
you give up.
and they're not taking responsibility for what happened. Anyway, this is one that I am going to watch with interest, because I am very intrigued by it, both from, like, you know, the legal perspective. Is there any callback on this, and are, like, our copyright and trademark laws, are they still relevant for the digital age, is quite interesting. But also just from the brand perspective, like the brand reputation perspective, it's a very, very interesting one. And yeah, I don't know if I need to find somewhere else to buy leggings.
Yeah, but again, as I said, so many big brands are doing it. Like, you'd end up not shopping. It just needs to stop. So another thing I've been reading about this week is Australia banning social media for under 16s. Obviously, this has been pretty much well received because we know that young people are spending a lot of time on social media. We know it's affecting their mental health. We know it's affecting their attention spans, their ability to learn in the classrooms. There's like loads of reasons why social media isn't great, although I'd say isn't great for anyone, not just under 16s. But what I found really fascinating is they've banned like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, the ones you'd expect, but they haven't banned Discord, which is a communication app. They have used generally by young people. They haven't banned lots of gaming chats. They haven't banned WhatsApp. They have, so they haven't. It feels a little bit like all the old people, of which could be my generation, have sat in a room and said, we need to ban social media for under 16s. So let's ban all the social media I know, Facebook, for example, but not actually speak to anybody that knows anything about young people to find out where they're actually hanging out and where they're actually speaking. Because no young people are on Facebook, but they are on Discord. So they will continue to communicate. News, chat groups where people are mean to each other. Those sort of vehicles, if you like, are still there. So I feel that if it was happening in the UK, I just know my kids would just find another way to access what they want to access. So I thought, let's chat about it. So is social media bad, for example? Let's just start there, because it's not just about children. Is social media bad? Full stop.
Sometimes.
I agree. Sometimes, because sometimes
I am way too balanced.
I have written some notes. I'm a little bit organised.
Have you?
I know. Because social media is bad, but also social media can be good. So, yeah, what do you think?
I think that at the end of the day, you partially kind of curate your own feed on a lot of social media like this, don't you? So it can be bad because you can get exposed to a lot of kind of things that give you a lot of editing of bodies, faces. You can get things like skinny talk and a lot of diet culture. You can get exposed to a lot of things which weren't meant for the eyes of children under 16. They weren't created with them in mind.
Absolutely.
So you can get exposed to a lot of that things. But equally, if you are creating your own feed, and my feed is generally made up of my little echo chamber bubble of people with very similar opinions to me. I don't see a lot of the Andrew Tates of this world unless it's some dude saying any rubbish. So
absolutely,
you do curate your feed in that way, but that can be like problematic for kids if they can then, like, when their brains are forming, that they can, if they have a thought, they go and look for it, and then they're bombarded over and over and over and over and over again with things which reinforce their thoughts. And that's how it can lead to that kind of spiral. So I think that banning those specific networks, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, can help with that side of it, where the bit where social media can be that negative input into something that you're already thinking. But I do think that it won't help with the side which you talk about, which is kind of the bullying side, which people talk about a lot with teenagers these days. I sound like such an old lady sitting on my porch with my if only I could knit. When we were kids, someone was mean to you at school, you went home, shut the door, and they had no access to you. You were there, or that was it. You could forget about it. Now they've got this permanent window on the world in their phones where these people have access to them all the time. So I don't think that the social media ban, like you said, will help with that, because they still have access to messaging things like WhatsApp and that kind of thing. And that's where the home environment and whether they do have access to that kind of thing is going to come in.
I think, yeah, as you said, there's good and there's bad. So there is lots of bad stuff. There's lots of false news, fake news. But there's also really good things for young people online. So, for example, I did follow teachers on TikTok giving GCSE tips to 15-year-olds on how to get a 9 in English. And my kids were following those and getting tips. So there's actually education on there. There are also youngsters that, for example, are questioning their sexuality, or not questioning because they already know who they are. And social media enables them to find their tribe, if you like, which if they're the, only LGBTQ person in the school or that they know of, they can go and find people and they, find their community. So I think there is some positive. But back to what you were saying about the algorithm shows you what you look at, that's when I think parenting needs to take a much bigger role around critical thinking. I remember once, I think it was when the Queen died and Prince Charles became king, and there was loads of TikToks made about Princess Diana. It all came back up. And I remember one of my children, my son, I think, coming to the table and just literally saying some blanket statement, about the death or about something. And I was like, whoa, where have you got that from? Because it was obviously like, it was something like, Charles murdered Diana or something. It was like really like the bottom line of what he's seen on
Yeah,
social.
the conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's therefore my role to say, okay, so where did you find that? Where did you read that? Where, and have those conversations. And I think if parents aren't having those conversations, then I suppose a ban is good. But again, is that letting parents off the hook? Because we need to know what's going on their phones, and we need to know what they're doing and have conversations about it. Now, of course, the counter argument to that is if they don't have it on their phones, then you don't need to have those conversations. Except I have 2 teenagers. I am well aware that they know every single trick in the book to get onto what they want to go on. So, for example, currently, totally outing my daughter, you've now got to give age verification for TikTok. Well, I don't know how, but she's got a new TikTok account. It's been verified. Not sure how that's happened. Totally outing her there. But the point is they will find a way. So I think we need to be careful that we don't let parents or schools or whoever off the hook of having those really important conversations, because they will find a way on there if they want to.
See, obviously, I do not have children, something which I am delirious about when it comes to this kind of thing, because it sounds like a nightmare. I would not want to have parented myself through the social media era. It would have been like terrible. Nope. I suddenly there's things and you go, oh no, I'm really starting to be the one that's like, oh, yeah. I don't know now, and it's kind of, do we need other solutions in an age where technology is moving so fast that we potentially can't keep up? How do you keep an eye on what your children be doing? I mean, I know it's like in the 70s, you would just let them go and play in the streets. Like, no one knew where your kids were. In the 80s, then I wasn't allowed to wear a T-shirt with my name on it because somebody might come up and go, hey, Jem, your mum says I should pick you up from school. So then there's always this kind of, it goes through these cycles where you're like, oh my God, there's the panic. And then there's the control over it. But when you're talking a kind of an invisible world, essentially, which is what we get online, how do you make sure that your children are safe and that they,
it's not easy. But I'm going to say something quite controversial. I think there's no excuse as a parent. If you have kids and they have a phone, you cannot go, I don't understand Snapchat. Get on it and understand it. Because if you can understand Facebook, you can understand Snapchat. You've just got to get on it. And I get a little bit annoyed with that argument because their welfare is my job, if you like. It is my responsibility. It's not Mark Zuckerberg's. I mean, it'd be lovely if he actually cared, but he doesn't. It's my responsibility. And I see it all the time, parents going, oh, I really don't understand Instagram. And I'm like, well, it's not hard. And I know it's easy for me because it's my job, but like, it's not that hard. And if, or create guidelines with your kids. I pay for my children's phones. My business does, to be fair. The rule is that I can look at them at any time without notice. And some people would say that's going against their rights. their privacy rights. And I'm like,
Can you see my face then? Yeah, no.
no. To be fair, my son is about to turn 18. I don't look at his phone, but my daughter, occasionally I do. I don't that often, but we have conversations. I know people who's like, my daughter's not allowed to go on TikTok, and I just laugh, and they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've seen her making them." It's got it's called a Finstagram, a fake Instagram is called a Finstagram. I think it's called a Finstagram. The young people call it because they've got their Instagram and then they've got their Finstagram. So they've got their fake one that their parents don't know about.
That their parents don't know
Except
about.
I know it's called a Fin. Now I'm wondering if it is called that. I'm sure it is, but they've all got that. So the parent going, "My daughter isn't on TikTok," when she's got a 14-year-old, it's like she is.
Are you sure?
She is. And so I'd rather see it. And, sometimes they make content and I'm like, oh my God. But then I'm like, at least I can see it. It's so.
So, do you think that there's a because obviously there's lines here where there's the government position, which is what Australia's taken, where they've just gone no, as a blanket ban, under 16s not on there at all. Is there a line? You say it's not Mark Zuckerberg's responsibility, but is it the responsibility of these companies to provide parents with a way of monitoring what their children are doing online, do you think?
I need to backtrack. It is obviously the owner's responsibility to make sure it's safe for everybody. But I can't sit here moaning about Mark Zuckerberg and not take responsibility for my own children. I think it's what I mean. You're like, he's literally, let's face it, he only cares about making money. I'm not saying that's right, but that is, he might say he cares about children, but they don't. They don't. I think potentially there is yes, giving us the tools as parents, but also maybe I think 16 is the bit for me. I'm like, 16. I mean, they're working.
It's quite
jobs.
old.
It's quite old. They're using it so my son, actually, no, he's 17, but that's only just over, isn't it? He's using it to book gigs. He's in a band. He's following bands and, musicians. He's checking out universities, not just on their website. He checks out the social media because these young people have different brains to us in respect that they've been brought up with it. So rather than Googling, is this university good, which is like what we might do, he wants to know what people are saying on socials, what are the photos on socials. He wants to know the social media side, not just the website side. So potentially, but then an 8-year-old isn't going to be doing that. So I think maybe for me, it's the 16 bit. Maybe it should be 13, of which they are supposed to be anyway.
Yeah. See, well, one of the questions I have about this blanket ban in Australia is if you are saying you cannot use social media until the age of 16, are you in a way disadvantaging your future generations as they get older in what is essentially a global economy where that social media presence is an important thing for businesses, potentially building a business, for it's something that could be your job, for promotions. And if you don't have access to it at all until you're 16, that's very late. And a lot of other people have already
it is late,
bypassed you. And you've got to not only learn it all from scratch, that's going to be essential for you to survive in the digital world.
I know
in the future.
My son's been working for me since he was 15, and he does my socials. He doesn't do all my socials, obviously, but he does my Pinterest, he does my YouTube. That's his part-time job. But then I do, again, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, you see them sitting with TikTok. But I remember going to India. So a couple of years ago, I went to Goa, and TikTok is banned in India. And I saw 10-year-olds literally looking at TikTok. It's banned, but ever heard of a VPN? I mean, for example, and I remember once my son and his mates were accessing dodgy material on YouTube, and I found it, and I spoke to the other parents. We had a conversation, what 12-year-olds look for online. So, and my friend, one of the mothers, was like, right, I'm banning YouTube, only YouTube Kids or whatever it was. And it was like, but you can just go to Google and you type in something and YouTube comes up. You don't need to be signed in to look at YouTube. So again, they'll find a way, but I don't think an 8-year-old will find a way, but a 14, 15, 16-year-old will. So I think for me, it's having the age. Maybe we should just force under 13s to not use it, but then put more onus back on to the likes of Mark Zuckerberg to look at their, editing and body dysmorphia or bad content. There was, when the news
The availability of like YouTube Kids, the availability of that kind of Facebook Kids,
well,
or
there is
that so that you've got an introduction to it
there is
that's
that
not
though.
quite.
There is that.
Oh, is there? Yeah, I
It's
see.
now age verification here. I can't remember what it was. Oh, my memory. Suddenly my son couldn't have access to something. So he's 17, nearly 18, because he's
Mm.
under 18. He couldn't see. It was something to do with the news. It was something to do with an election or something. I can't remember. But I remember my response was, so somebody has decided, my 17-year-old, who will be voting in 6 months, like soon. And also, obviously, if
Yeah.
the voting age changes, he can't see the news as is. It's been like filtered for him. But how are we then expecting him to decide who to vote for? So it's that, is it nanny state? Is it like, I think it's the teenage issue for me. I think it's just like potentially not thought through so much and
I think,
taking the onus away from the individual and the family. No, putting
again,
the onus on them, I mean, and taking it off the actual people that run the company.
I think in the way the digital world works and the way that we use it is so kind of rapidly evolving that it's a lot of the kind of laws and even like principles that we've had growing up to now aren't kind of relevant in this age for this kind of economy, that it's really difficult. I mean, it goes back to like what we were talking about, the copyright thing as well. Is it like valid in a digital age when everything is so different, that you've got to look at things in a different way? So it's easy to say, this could be dangerous for children, but also restricting their access to it, something that's so widespread, so broadly used by adults and that they will need to use as adults, is potentially kind of, I mean, could we limit the time? Could we,
Yeah.
this is what I kind of, again, my words have gone.
One thing I've learned as a parent is the more you say no to something, the more they want it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember that.
Exactly.
I mean, you must remember
Oh,
that,
yeah,
right?
totally and utterly. But also, even in the UK, back to what I was saying about age verification, so my son now can't access Spotify songs that have parental guidance record, like swearing in. It's like 17 and a
Right.
half studying music at college. And he can't listen to
Right.
the streets because they swear or talk about drugs. But again,
Yeah.
I understand. But then I also think, oh, for goodness sake. And I think there's part of me that's like, we literally were playing on the street. Okay, we didn't have social media. Life was different. But like, are we going the other way that you can't hear a swear word at 17? But it's because that's like, can we get real here? But I'm talking teenagers. Obviously, children, I think it's a good thing. But I think it's the 16-year-old and thing that riles me. But also, it's this whole we'll ban Facebook but not Discord. It's like, literally, did nobody think like how actually young people actually use social media?
See, again, this is what it comes to, I guess. I mean, I use Discord for a couple of things, but again, so I know how Discord works. I'm on a couple of Discords. My roller derby team use
Mm.
Discord for communication, and there's a couple of other like communities I've joined, but I don't know how teenagers are using it. I have no
So what
idea. So if you were talking about, if the reason for restricting the access to social media is to protect them from harmful content rather than protect them from communications that kind of with their friends, like the bullying, the cyberbullying kind of side of it, then I think that you're likely that the access to Discord and WhatsApp is more on that side of things, but I have no idea
so
what teenagers are using it
before we
for.
finish then, for parents, Discord,
Education
there
for
are
parents.
groups with randoms in. Like literally, I remember my son, he must have been, I don't know, early teens, was in a group with a load of randoms chatting about how depressed they were and how life was bad. And then he was like, I want to go and meet them in Birmingham. We live in Bedford. I want to go and meet these random people. And we were like, no, you're not getting on a train and meeting these random people who could be 40-year-old men who know, we don't know who they are. And then we read it all. And we were shocked at what they were talking about with strangers. So it's not just the class groups, strangers. Roblox is another thing that hasn't been banned for under 16s. That's a game people use. But it's also one of the most famous games of grooming kids. So it's kind of like, yes, that's not body dysmorphia. That's not like fake news, but actually it's really dangerous too. So I feel
And it's
like
not protected.
just have they done half a job, or I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
more complicated. And I think a lot of people are like, great, they've banned social media for under 16s. And anyone that's got a teenager or understands social media is like, don't think you've quite hit the nail, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not, you've not.
I think for me, it does sound like if they've done half a job, but potentially means that there's only half of the rest of it to try and manage as a parent, maybe.
True. Although, judging by my kids, and this is, again, I'm outing my kids, at 15, 16, they'll find a way around it. Absolutely. I think, young children shouldn't be on social media. Absolutely. And I think we need to look at what they are looking at. But I just think it's back to being told you weren't allowed to wear makeup to school and then literally walking down the road and putting it on. And I know that's not as serious, but it's still, they will find a way. My children managed to have done it themselves, so they know there are ways.
My mum wouldn't let me go to London, so I told her I was going to like Bromley or somewhere, I think, and then went to London anyway.
But it's a thing. When you go on a website, an alcohol website, and it says, "Are you over 18?" and you press yes.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. They might. I'm sure maybe when it arrives, you have to give. I don't know, but it's almost like, no, I'm not going to press no, am I? So it's a bit like, yeah. So anyway, they'll find a way.
Right. It's a bit like lip service, making it look like you're making an effort to help, but really it's probably not going to be that much help in the long run.
No, and as we've said, we need to fight fake news, Russian bots, leaving comments to sway the algorithm one way, politics being swayed by bots, and there are and also the body dysmorphia things, editing, all of that is so important, but it's important for everybody, and that needs to be tackled. But I don't feel like just a blanket ban for teenagers. I'm not talking about kids, teenagers as such is quite the way to do it. I don't know whether people will agree with me. Thank you for joining us for another roundup of midlife chat, hot takes, and occasional moaning. Well, quite a bit of moaning.
Make sure you hit subscribe so your podcast app gently nudges you every Friday, because honestly, who remembers anything without a reminder these days? And also, we like people liking us because we're very needy.
And if you fancy being extra lovely, leave us a rating or a review. It helps more brilliant women like you find us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and make sure you find time for yourself. You deserve it.